Now.
And just like that, we're live. Welcome to the January 2024 version of the Philmont Trek Talk Facebook group's Q&A that we do live, sort of remotely. Like, I promise you I am live. I promise you everyone on the panel here is live. We're just not with you live. We're live remotely through the magic of technology. So welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you here. The goal of this monthly live discussion is to field comments and questions from folks who would like to have the absolute best experience possible at Philmont Scout Ranch. Either as predominantly we're talking about the adults that are going to prevent a Lord of the Flies situation within the youth and the crews that they are traveling with and vacationing with. But we could also have youth watching this or sending in questions as well. So another bit of housekeeping. Please submit your questions. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, anecdotes, missives, keep those limited though. Anything that you'd like to say about how ridiculous it is that the long-haired hippie on bottom is a member of Team Chair. I say hippie in the nicest sense of the word possible. Yeah. So anyhow,
that's because the rest of us barely have any hair.
Right. So, yeah. Dude, come on. So but anyhow, that's the idea, is we are looking for some audience participation here. The other reminder is, if you are coming in through one of the Facebook groups, like the Philmont Trek Talk group on Facebook, and you have not yet visited StreamYard.com/Facebook. Yeah, sorry. Had to make sure I didn't get that backwards. StreamYard.com/Facebook. And giving it permission to tell us who you are when you leave a comment, you will come through as our most popular customer on this program, and that would be Facebook user. And we won't know who you are when you're talking. So for what that's worth, I think that wraps up all the introductory stuff. For now, we are going to talk this week about some really important stuff, really interesting things. We're going to talk about rangers. We're going to talk about campsites, camps out there at Philmont. We're going to talk about trails at Philmont. Are we going to do them in that order? I have no idea. We're going to have to see how this flows. So any questions you have about camps, rangers, or trails at Philmont, queue those up and send them over to us. And we will see if we can scare up an accurate answer for you. So with that, hi, I'm Jeff. I would like to introduce myself for the first time on this program as the former skipper of Sea Scout Ship 4019 in Burlington, North Carolina. I have demoted myself to now what a scout troop will call an assistant scoutmaster, a Sea Scout ship calls a mate. So I am now a mate, and I'm very pleased to be in that position once again. The field promotion that I got that made me skipper was long overdue to get me out of that, get someone who's actually competent in place, and we have that now. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. I've been to Philmont 4 times, once as a youth, 3 times as an adult, and am hoping I can make it back at some time soon. My experience does not hold a candle to Mr. T here. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Will do. Question for you, Jeff, did the ship sink?
Oh, well, no, that's the great thing, is we were able to find a new skipper who actually knew what he was doing soon enough that the ship didn't actually sink. It threatened to a couple times, but yeah, it's been saved.
Everybody pitched in and bailed, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Darrel Tadsen, Greater St. Louis Area Council, multiple years of Trek or adult advisor for the crew, and the last number of years been council contingent coordinator for the Greater St. Louis Area Council, and looking forward to going back in 24, arriving on June the 8th.
Nice. All right.
Scott O'Mary. I am in my 9th year as Scoutmaster at Troop 259 here in Plano, Texas. I have been to Philmont once as a summer trek participant, once as a winter adventure participant. I guess, Darrel, what would you say? Once as a tourist this past summer, just passing through.
Yeah.
And this summer, I'm heading back as a training center participant. So I'll be doing the
Nice.
Philmont Leadership Challenge. So I'm looking forward to that too. So I'll get one day in the backcountry for that. So
You'll be across the road.
I think I can get in shape for one day in the backcountry. Over you to team chair.
Rob's got every bit of volume that he deserves. And I'm not doing that, by the way. He has muted himself, it appears, or has an audio issue. Okay, his name is Rob.
That helps.
He's from is it Fallon, Illinois? O'Fallon, Illinois? I can't remember which one it is.
O'Fallon.
Yeah, we'll just call it that. Anyhow, I'm sure Rob will sort out. It's usually a microphone issue. If you go into your audio settings, it's just on the wrong one, probably a window. Shaking your head at me? Really? Come on. He's just all attitude this evening. So maybe he'll get that sorted out and be able to join us. And if so, I'm sure he'll speak up. So where shall we start? Shall we start with, let's talk about Rangers. Rangers have, I'm just going to say it, and I hope no one else at Philmont gets offended. They may actually have the coolest title in scouting, in my opinion. I don't know. But what do you think is the primary responsibility of a ranger?
What do we think, or what do they think their responsibility is?
I'm open to either.
Ooh, good question.
Darrel, you want to take a stab at this one?
I'll throw something out there. They are really the primary face of Philmont to the crew. That's their job begins when the crew arrives on property, and they shepherd that crew through the orientation onboarding process and develop a tremendously strong rapport with the crew that I've seen. And they really are, for the first day and a half to 3 days really, they are the face of Philmont, and they have a tremendously important position. And I envy them a little bit. Like Jeff said, it's a cool title, but a cool job. They are indispensable to the program, the beginning program at Philmont. They got a bazillion duties to do.
Sure.
To impart the knowledge that how Philmont would like to operate with the crew, and how the crew should operate, the best practices. And part of it is for them to have a comfortable understanding or comfortable feeling that the particular crew they have will be successful in the backcountry. And for the adults, I will say this: the ranger will focus his communication through the crew leader. Philmont is absolutely behind, youth leadership, and they practice it diligently. And I know I had an experience early on in my career that I think my second trip, I made a comment to the ranger, and he said, "Thank you very much for your input, but I'm dealing with the crew leader, and I will chat with you adults later." Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta think the ranger is thinking of his role as well as maybe not only teaching skills, but breaking some, not necessarily bad habits, but practices of the crew that might not be the Philmont way. Cooking,
To-
Cooking skills would be a good example where
Yeah,
somebody has some odd, crazy cooking ideas, and they got to teach the Philmont way.
and the Philmont way, they're open on that. It's not a matter of that it's the only way or the highway, but they got 75, 80 years of history that, the kind of the way they do things, is applicable across the board, because you have crews coming in there who've never backpacked anywhere before.
So let's I want to tackle this head on, Scott, because I have over the years taken a lot of heat for my position on the Philmont cooking method, and I know that everyone in this discussion right here has noticed that I have toned down that rhetoric a tremendous amount, and I'll tell you, I still don't think that the Philmont cooking method is the best way to do it. Um, but they've kind of come part way close enough, and they'll entertain people doing other things that make sense, to the point that I'm like, it's not worth fighting it anymore. But the big thing that really struck me is uh, uh, with the probably with the last crew I went out with, which may have been my best experience yet. There were a couple people who weren't just like not backpackers; they weren't campers. Like they needed a simple teach one thing to everyone, standardized method that if they get something wrong, they can, and they're at a staff camp or there's another crew going by, they could get some feedback on what are we doing wrong. And, having a standardized method does have some benefits, I think. And I wanted to mention that to kind of circle back to the idea that I don't think the ranger's job is I don't today. I don't think of it as trying to force any ideas down people's throats, other than like basic safety and decency and that kind of thing. Like there are some base expectations that any scout camp you go to, you need to follow, that kind of thing. But I think of it more as I was a scout from the day I was able to be. And I was out camping from the very first camping trip that was available to me. I was doing it. And I often forgot that a lot of people didn't grow up that way. A lot of people don't have that experience. And it wasn't until later, and talking to a lot of people who work at Philmont, and have worked at Philmont, that I realized the scope of experience, the breadth of the scope of experience. I mean, yes, they had said we have people who show up who've never really camped before, but I didn't really believe like never really camped. I interpreted that as being a lower level of camping experience than me, but not like literally never having camped. But then you talk to some of the staff and it's like, no, there are literally people who get off the bus and have never slept in a tent, have never put on a backpack and backpacked anywhere.
And that's their first experience. Wow.
So right. So imagine being the ranger, this typically a fairly young person who is tasked with in ensuring that this group of people with varied experience, sometimes very, very little experience, can go out into a very rugged environment that's not very forgiving, where help isn't minutes away ever, pretty much, and do so safely. I mean, they have such a task. And I do feel bad for people who divert them off of that task and distract them for petty things, even sometimes I'm sure they don't always seem petty to the people who are arguing them, including myself when I argue petty things, because I do it sometimes. But to me that but to me that main role, it's really what you guys said of helping them get out there safely. But until you look at it through the perspective of what if those people stepping off the bus at the welcome center have never backpacked or camped before, because it happens, or pretty close to it, or maybe they've only done one or two shakedown hikes, but they still really like a weekend hike is not the same as a week in the backcountry. It's completely different for a number of reasons. So, that they have such a huge responsibility. Yeah.
I would say from a crew advisor perspective, it's particularly for your first time. If you don't have anybody in your crew maybe who's been to Philmont, they give you that little bit of extra safety net, comfort level getting out on the trail. And yes, you're absolutely right. They are talking to the crew lead. They could care less if I'm there for the most part for those few days.
He'll have, and you can have time with him. Usually, I don't want to say downtime, but in the evening and so forth. And you can certainly develop a rapport with them. And how are we doing? And how can I assist you? Or if you have a question as an advisor, what is your recommendation or the Philmont, if you want to call it philosophy or policy? How should we be doing these things?
Yep. So maybe, Darrel, you can give us some insight, if you have any, on how your crew gets assigned a ranger. Is it like the luck of the draw? Can you actually request? If you have a scout that is in your unit that's a ranger that summer, could you request that ranger? Or vice versa? I just don't know how that happens. I just poof, they're there.
By
Yeah.
99% of the time, it is pure luck of the draw.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any insight into if they, review the crew requirements, experience, or whatever ahead of time. Maybe not. I don't know. But, can you request a ranger? It's been done. A ranger coming from your home, his home, or a crew coming from a ranger's home unit or whatever, he can go to the head ranger and say, hey, this is the situation. Could I be assigned? And not a guarantee, but
Right.
As with a lot of things, if you don't ask, you'll never know. And Philmont determines, what's best and so forth. Well, maybe not what's best, but they'll look at the situation and act accordingly. But as far as who shows up, my experience has been in the Welcome Center, and we tell them, we call up to the ranger office and we say Expedition 610 Alpha has checked in, and about 10 minutes later, a ranger comes down and says, where can I find 610 Alpha? And we point them in the right direction and introduce them, and they go from there. How he got assigned, don't know the back workings there.
Now, unless things have changed, we've always shown up a day early, checked in, not officially checked in, but checked in a day early. We don't get a ranger at that point. We're kind of on our own. We can do a little bit of the pre-work to get set up to go out in the backcountry, but we can't do everything.
The only thing,
one of those crews showing up, you won't get your crew into your actual official check-in date.
Right. You won't get your ranger until, if you're a 610 crew, that's June the 10th, and that's when you'll get your ranger at 8 or 8:30 in the morning whenever you arrive. If you arrive a day early, you'll get a welcome briefing from the Welcome Center staff. They'll point out the highlights, particularly the things that will be available to you, like the cantina or the trading post and the cantina, and, where to meet for supper, lunch or supper, breakfast, and your tent assignments. And that's kind of it. The rest of the onboarding, incoming process, is reserved to the morning of your official first day. My recommendation: be on property by at least 10 o'clock in the morning of your arrival day.
Yes, absolutely. And on your official date, they are walking your crew around to various points on the property. You do your med check-in, you go get your crew gear. You go get your food. We do a little pack check. What am I missing that the ranger's helping you on that first day?
The big thing the crews are really interested in is logistics, visiting logistics, reviewing their itinerary. They get a crew photo taken. They like to take crew photos prior to noon because they orientate it so that the tooth of time is in the background in the afternoon. Then the sun is in the camera's face and pictures aren't too good. So, but yeah, they get a tour of the ranch and, base camp, I should say. And logistics, health lodge, tooth of time. They'll walk by and point out the trading post.
Yeah. So that's the role of the ranger in base camp. Then once you hit the trail, what should a crew expect from their ranger as you step off property or step off the bus, or depending on how you get out to your start point?
Well, can we hold that point just real quickly? I just want to make one small distinction here.
Hold that
thought. Hold that thought. For those folks who are listening in that have been to Northern Tier, what we've described so far is very similar to Northern Tier's interpreter role at base camp, with a couple exceptions. Is that the interpreter at Northern Tier, they're going to do your med check for you. They're going to do your logistics for you, where the ranger's not doing those activities at Philmont. He is taking you to designated locations where another group is performing those functions with your crew lead.
Well,
Also,
Northern Interior, I believe your interpreter is with you for the entire trek at Philmont.
That's right. We're getting that in a second. Yes, but absolutely the whole time.
Okay, good. So, all right. So you step off the bus.
Go now. Okay.
You step off the bus, or you step off of base camp property at the beginning of your trek, if that's your starting point, is hiking out of camp. What should you expect from your ranger then?
He's going to show you, for lack of a better term, the Philmont way. How do we hike? He's already gone through a shakedown with you. How do we set up camp? What identifies a campsite? How to hang bear bags? And through all of this, he's going to be going through what he calls ranger training. He's going to cover map and compass, first aid, all kinds of things. How to read a map, what all the symbols on a map mean, how to orientate a map. He's going to, I don't know if it's training, but at least go over with the crew the various skills that are needed.
Well, that's a good distinction, though. If a crew has prepped as we would say they should, then it's a review and it's checking boxes and making sure, that nothing slipped through the cracks. But it can be pretty rudimentary, and, they see the lights are on and they just keep moving, right?
Right.
Or if the crew didn't prep right, they got a lot of teaching to do, right?
Yep. And, he'll go through the favorite topic. He'll go through the Philmont method for cooking. That's, typically he prepares and demonstrates and shows the first night meal. And let's kind of get a distinction there. There really isn't a lot of cooking at Philmont. It's more rehydrating, and breakfast and lunch is basically finger food. Pop-Tarts and things like that. So the evening meal where a stove is required to heat water and so forth, he will demonstrate the Philmont method the first night. The second night, he will observe whoever has been designated as the cooks, the cleanup, bear bags, all of that stuff. So the second day, he's observing how well the crew has learned or knows the skills, and if there's a discussion at that point of, hey, this is the way we have done it, for those crews who have a lot of experience, it can be a very open discussion with the ranger. And it's, I don't want to say it's his decision, but he will give his comments. And I would say they agree on a method of procedure that the crew will do the remainder of the trek.
Sure.
I would really like to point out for the experienced crews is the adult advisor who says to the crew with his back to the ranger, well, we'll do what the ranger says, but as soon as he leaves, we'll go back to do it our way. That just totally undermines the position of the ranger and what he's trying to do and what Philmont is trying to impart.
So when Jeff posed his question, I was thinking a little bit more granular, like the second I got off the bus, what do we expect the ranger to do?
Well, and I'm open to either one of those
experience-
interpretations. I think either one can be useful for crews that are headed out there.
Well, I guess my interpretation was I got off the bus, we unload the bus, we're there with a few other crews at the trailhead, and I can see the trailhead right there. We're excited. We're ready to get on the trail, and we're sitting there about 45 minutes in the trailhead, just working on map and compass skills and how to use the red roof in. And it's all good, but I just want to kind of set the expectation for any new crews out there. You're going to do a little bit of training even after you get dropped off at the trailhead before you start moving. So cool your heels a little bit.
In a typical manner, you're off the bus, you're going to be met by the Welcome Center staff. Maybe for the first half hour or 45 minutes or so, the ranger will arrive, and this is assuming you arrive on your official first day. It'll take about 45 minutes or so, to unload the bus, make a pack line, get your Welcome Center talk, and get the ranger assignment, and you're off and running. Typically, Philmont wants the crew to be in base camp for a minimum of 24 hours for altitude acclimation, and you will have a bus the following day anywhere from 8 to 3 o'clock, depending upon how long you've been in base camp, where your starting camp is, things like that. Again, that's predetermined by logistics, knowing your arrival time, knowing your trek, your itinerary number, and I'll put a plug in for the gateway. Put all that information in there and get as soon as you have it. The second day you're on your way, you off to the trailhead, and you may sit there for a while the ranger covers. Yeah. He's got a whole checklist.
Mm-hmm. So a dynamic that I want to point out for the adults who have not experienced this before, although they should have, right? I mean, units should work similar to a crew, although we know some of them don't. But a dynamic you're going to see that ranger reinforce around base camp is they're going to try to direct the communication through the crew leader, the youth. That's not the lead advisor or the crew advisor. That's like the head youth position. But the moment they get off the bus, I think as an adult, expect to be in the shadows. Expect to be like, you're there, and the ranger needs to know you're there, just to the extent that like you haven't fallen behind and they have to worry about tracking you down. Like they don't need to hear from you. They only need to see you just to know that you're okay and that you're still in the right general area and not doing things that are going to cause problems. And that's it. And I think a great example to Scott's point about like, as you step off the bus, that ranger is probably going to ask the crew leader to assign people to help unload the bus. Like it starts then. No,
the ranger does. You do not. The Welcome Center staff welcomes you off the bus and directs you at that point. Probably will not see your ranger for at least a half hour.
No, we're talking about after the second day when you're dropped off.
Oh, the second day, absolutely. But off the bus, the ranger is not there yet. He has not been assigned.
I was going to let him go with it because, the Welcome Center, they are always overachieving. And I just assumed that that's an extra level of service that Darrel was providing to people.
That's why the fees have gone up this year.
Right.
And And I'll say this, and I got a very positive comment from several rangers when I was the crew advisor. I would introduce myself, and at an appropriate time, I would say to the ranger, "I know you have a job to do, and I'm going to let you do it."
All right. Good. So, so we've got off the bus. We've gone through that initial training. We hit the trail. And why don't we transition and talk about the trails now? So, because we're halfway through our allotted hour, I'd like to give some time if we have any questions coming in. What do we want to talk about with trails here? I think a good first point would be don't deviate from them. Don't mess with them. Don't rearrange things on them. Like if there is something that is obviously amiss, huge storm came through and there's a big washout and like it's obvious this thing used to be there and you want to put it back in place. I don't know, make a judgment call. But generally speaking, don't mess with the trails, right? Like we are in a leave no trace environment and that includes the trail. Like what do we want to talk about here? How do you find the trail? How do you make sure you're still on the right trail? How do you choose when you have multiple routes available? Which trails or roads or whatever you choose to get from one to the other? Who wants to tackle one of those things? Do we want to test Rob's mic, see if he got it fixed yet? No.
He's just here to look pretty.
You're doing a bang up job, man. Good job. All right.
Hit the mute button again. Unmute it.
Well, just a clarification, Jeff. Let's talk about the trails on Philmont proper property, as opposed to bushwhacking out in the valley or something like that. It's a little different. It's a little different on how you.
I think I heard him.
Just heard Rob.
There he is.
Hey, I don't know what I did.
You were holding out on us before.
Well, don't do it
You were
again.
doing that on purpose.
I'm just sitting here listening. It's good discussion. Experts. Yeah. Continue.
Trails, Rob.
Scott, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you were saying, Scott.
So,
I was going to say, just let's focus first on the trails at Philmont proper.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. So, and that's really what I was referring to, like stay on the trails, that kind of thing. I've never been up in the Valle or any of the places where well, I was going to say I've never been any place. I want to say that like the meadow that leads up to Beaubien, that there are portions of it that it was suggested, there's not a trail. Maybe we should all spread out so we're not spreading not concentrating impact in an area where they have not designated a trail. I don't know. But aside from that, like I haven't been any place where where it was any different than, here's the trail, stay on it.
Our last group in 2022 actually got off of the trail the second day maybe, and ended up going on a deer trail. And they thought they were on the trail. And before they knew it, they were several miles off the beaten path and had to backtrack. And, that doesn't do well for the, day two to get that far off. And I mean, day two on the trail, not day two, according to Philmont. So that kind of put a irritation on the whole crew. From what I understand, I didn't go on that trip, but it's always good to sit down and figure out if you're really on the right trail. Seems like Darrel, you've said you just drop your pack and they're on the wrong trail and follow.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's what I hear.
Get a mile down the trail, turn around, come back, find the remnants of Darrel's pack laying, 26 yards off the trail.
Well, at least they didn't find remnants of me, but
right. Yeah, that's good.
But your ranger will do that on that your second day at Philmont, the first day that you go to your starting camp. He'll talk about the trails, how to identify them, what the trail signs. The last few years they've gone to while I still have trail signs that point to, the various camps, O'Neill and Dean Canyon and things that, but they've also put out a lot of GPS posts.
Hmm.
So if you have a GPS unit or whatever, you can verify that. But they're all in UTM, and the sectional maps are a much larger scale. I would recommend them, that map for navigation, and you can easily find the UTM marks and find yourself on the map. And that goes into what I call awareness, situational awareness. Where are we? What should we be seeing? Should we be going uphill, downhill? We're supposed to be going north. Hey, Mr. Crew Leader, if we're going north and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, how come the sun is on my left shoulder? And ask the crew, hey guys, I'm not sure. Let's reconnoiter. Let's get the map out. How do we choose where we go? Again, like the ranger, the adult steps to the background, lets it be a crew decision. The ranger can, or not the ranger, but the adult advisor or any advisor can certainly ask the question, very simply, are you sure? And then, what landmarks are we going to see in the next half mile? Is there going to be a pond on our left side?
So I'm making that suggestion to the crew, whether it's just a question or the question itself is the suggestion, like, hey, here's a clue that something's not right. I'm asking you questions. I will, I typically, I've gotten some flack from people before because on the last, I've 4 treks, I've only carried a map one time. And that was as a youth, and actually, I don't think I even carried my map myself. Like I had the cruise map at some point,
I didn't
but
even
that's
have
the
a
only
map
time.
last time.
That's the only time I've had a map is when I was the navigator.
Right.
That's the only time I had a map. And as an adult, I've known adults to follow along with the GPS and have their map out the whole time and kind of cough when someone makes a decision. And so what I wanted to point out here is many times I have seen adults steer the crew the wrong direction. So I'm going to say, if you're going to speak up, either speak up with an honest question like, hey, help me understand why we're doing this. Don't try to steer them the way you think, unless you better darn sure be positive that you're right. And more than that, you need to be right if you're going to try to influence a crew on something like that.
Yeah.
And I would say, so in what scenarios would you guys say that it might be okay for an adult to kind of speak up? Like generally, we want to let them fail and learn from those failures. What scenarios might you say, probably one of us needs to speak up and nudge them back on course? What would some of those scenarios be? So I'll give you one.
Sure, go ahead.
An obvious, complete 100%, like I don't even have a map and I know we're going the wrong direction. And there is some sort of tension or impending storm, or the whole trek was based around getting to O'Neill in time to see the show, and we're going to be late if we continue going miles the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like, there may be some big things. We know that Mr. Whoever at the back of the line has got huge blisters, and doing an extra 3 miles just for kicks probably wouldn't be too nice to him. Those are some of my examples. You have any other examples of when you think
You're going to be late for the advisor coffee?
That's a very good one. Cookies. It's the cookies, really, for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Health and
I
safety.
think you can
Health
kind of
and
go out.
safety is absolutely it.
Mhm. We've had advisors in our home troop, that have let the the boys in our case go miles and miles and miles down the wrong trail, only to have to figure out and turn around and go back. And I think there's a point where you think, okay, how about we sit down and look at the map, see where we're really at. Are we on the right trail? And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's your role as an advisor, to advise on, all right, are we really on the right track? What do you think? And there's a point where it becomes not a fun trip if you're going, 15 miles in a day. When you're only supposed to go 8.
Well, and
I don't want to do that.
Really good point. Sometimes your itinerary has you going 4 miles. And if you do 3-4 miles of sidetrack, one might suggest that that's not the end of the world. But if you got a 16-mile day and they're headed off the exact wrong direction, maybe you can't afford that. You can afford to give them 3 minutes to figure it out. And then all right, sorry, we got to stop. We don't have time for that today. We don't need to arrive at our next camp in the dark,
So the other question is, so when you, for whatever reason, have, called a halt and let's do a map check, and you determine that you're not really where you wanted to be, what do you do?
I do. I pull out the poop kit and nudge one of the other adults or one of the scouts and say, "Hey, y'all want to look at the map while I'm busy?" And I'm going to hold them up until they figure it out.
That's a good idea.
Well, where I'm going is, once you've determined you're not exactly where you want to be, what is your method for correction?
Mm-hmm.
My advice is stay on the trail. Retrace your steps if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to get in trouble is where you actually get off the trail and say, hey, if we shoot a bearing, straight to our right and bushwhack off the trail, you're just asking for problems then.
Sure.
Stay on the trail. If you know that it's a turnaround and go back, okay, fine. It may be better to even go forward and find a trail that brings you back the other way. Or if you really don't know, go until you find a trail sign that says, camp this way, camp that way, whatever. Then you have a very good idea where you are and how you recover.
If you're in a part of the backcountry that has a fair number of camps, you're going to run across. You stay on a trail, you're going to run across a camp pretty soon.
Yeah, you'll identify where you are. It may not be where you want to be, but at least you are now found.
So we're in a part of the world that doesn't have any geographic features. So when our crews get out to Philmont, they're like, wow. And they're seeing the geographic features, probably the mountain the first time. And they quickly pick up on the map and the features and are fairly well oriented. They rarely even hold out the compass while we were on Philmont property.
And that's what I was referring to, the situational awareness. We're, Baldy needs to be on our left. Or whatever, some geographic feature that you can identify.
Okay, so we have gotten up in the morning, crew, and we are sitting at our little advisor's coffee, watching the scouts get ready and discussing which path do you think our crew is going to direct us on today? Is it going to be the logging road? Is it going to be the trail that goes up and down and around? Are we going to go over the mountain? Are we going to go down around the mountain?
Don't like where this is going already. That's a conversation the night before, not when you wake up and sitting around having coffee.
Right. I would have that conversation the night before, so that the crew leader and the individual who's going to be the navigator or pace setter for the day knows that we're going to go over there to the trail, and we're going to the right,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to go here or there or whatever. You have to look at the terrain. You got to look where you're ultimately going to go. What's your next campsite, and take into the abilities of the crew.
Sure. So what do we want to avoid? Like of the things I described. So you guys picked up on something really good, and that's reinforcing that should be part of the crew leader's process for the evening, is to talk about what the plan is for the next day and be sure everyone's clear on what their responsibilities are, and that the navigator. I say navigator because it's hard to break the habit of calling it a navigator, but I literally saw it on both the last two crews I was with, that when people said it enough times, it's like it reduced expectations. It was like, nah, just guess. You're the navigator. Why are you spending so much time? Just pick something. Like, just go. Like, no, we need to stop. I don't know that I want to completely abandon the term navigator, but I do think that it lowers expectations when we encourage that term. So I'm done encouraging it. I may discourage it a bit, actually, moving forward.
But I think the night before, not only as a crew leader, I think that's a time when the advisor and the crew leader can get together and talk about how is the crew working, how are they working together. Hey, let's look at tomorrow's map. Where are we going? So that you, the crew leader, can identify and speak to the crew and say this is what's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to be a 15-mile hike, or it might be a 5-mile hike. We're going to go uphill, downhill. I would say stick to the trails rather than roads. Roads are out in the open. They're much harder surface because being packed down. Have less shade. The trails are typically in the woods or in a shaded area.
You missed the biggest reason why I don't like roads. I mean, you hit some big ones. Being out there with no shade is huge. The steeper grade, that's important.
Right.
But I think the biggest danger on the roads, and I only partially say this in jest, chaplains.
Well, there is vehicular traffic on those roads.
And some of that traffic is more aggressive than others. So not everyone has their chosen deity on their side to guide them down the road, which means the trucks generally go slower. But if you hear a Subaru coming, that's God's way of warning you. You need to step off the road before the chaplain gets there, because they tend to go a little.
I was wondering where that was going. They
go a little hastily down the road. Yeah.
Unbeknownst to a lot of people, Philmont does have and encourages their staff that there is a speed limit in the backcountry.
Oh, sure. And I'd say I was only partially in jest. I know they've earned the reputation of being lead-footed backcountry drivers, but they're doing good work out there. And
but yeah, on the if you have a choice, trail. If you don't have a choice, okay, you gotta take the road. Philmont is aggressively moving, from the route from A to B off any roads. Well, that leads us to conservation project. They do a lot of trail building during the summer, and logging roads. In some areas, that's maybe all you got. And I'm thinking particularly up in the vault or the vault. Some of those locations, logging road is it.
Sure. So we're approaching 10 minutes left, and we've not talked about camps yet. So you're going down the trail. How do you know when you are approaching a camp?
You have a screenshot or a photo you can pop up there?
Jeff? I'll locate one. Okay. You can talk about it while I look for it in the background here.
Map of all the campsites.
Exactly. You got to kind of keep your eyes peeled, though. You can't be looking down at your feet or the pack of the guy in front of you. But
Well, if you're watching your map and knowing where you are, you pretty well know that, hey, within the next couple of minutes of hiking, we should be at XYZ camp. But yeah, as you approach a camp, usually on a tree, you will find a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. There it is, depicting the camp in very large scale. And there's also two kinds of camp. You have the staff camp, which is pretty definitive what it is. There's a staff there at the program. And then there's a trail camp. The sign you see here will be mostly the trail camps, so that you can identify the various camp sites within the camp. At a staff camp, you will go to the cabin and check in, and they will assign you and escort you typically to the campsite. And again, part of the ranger training, as he takes you out, your first night on the trail will be in a trail camp, about 99% of the time. And she, the ranger will identify to you and tell you the various things that identify and designate a campsite within a particular camp.
Yeah. So on this map shows a couple. I wonder. Let me see if I can zoom that just a little bit more without it losing resolution too much. This one on the last trek I was on, we came into Abreu and then stayed in Rimrock Park. So typically, your you wouldn't necessarily see Rialto River Camp, Rimrock Park, Old Abreu. There are a bunch of different things on this map outside of just the one that's concerned here, and often it's only going to have one camp. This one, you have like campsites numbered for Rimrock Park down here, where there are going to be overlapping numbers probably with the ones there at Abreu. But I just thought that was neat when I noticed that this one covered multiple camps when most only cover the camp that they're posted at.
Yeah, and your ranger will go over this as part of the ranger training. When you approach the camp, probably the first night that your campsite, he will go over this. He will also cover how do you select a campsite within the camp. What are the various considerations that you should make.
Right.
It'll identify where the bear bags are, or the bear cable, where the Red Roof Inn is, where the sumps are, where the various camps are. And again, that's one of those multitude of things that the ranger is going to impart knowledge to the crew in the first 2 days that he's with them.
Right. And this one is, okay, this is Old Abreu. So this one was on that, the map of Abreu. And then, so as you go down the trail and actually arrive at Old Abreu, you get another map there. So you should expect that at every site, correct? Not just staff camps, the non-staff camps, the trail camps.
I would expect them more at trail camps than at a staff camp, because you're going to walk into a staff camp and you're going to see the staff cabin and program things. I mean, you're going to see, what do I want to call it? You're going to see civilization, where in a trail camp, it's just a wide spot in the road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'll be like a well or a buffalo.
Right. Where's the water source?
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the suggestion is that if someone does have a camera, and I'm not going to get into those issues of taking a camera or a cell phone or whatever, but take a picture of this so that as you move into the camp, you can refer to that picture and say, well, we're kind of here. The bear bag should be over there in that direction, and the water source over here.
Yeah. And you can see here the legend at the bottom that marks the box with an L's a latrine, the R's a red roof, the circle's a fire ring. It lists the bare box, the bare cables, the sump, the spring, purified and unpurified water. So, and I mention that just for reference to understand, these are custom maps just to help you understand, like they know what you're looking for when you get there. They got everything you need to know marked down there at the bottom of that map. All right. So that gets you into the campsite. We're down to about 5 minutes here.
Mhm.
So, like you said, the ranger is going to help people figure out, priorities and how to choose the campsite. I know a consideration that I often hear is along the lines of, if you're there early, don't take like the first site. And like, because most camps you're coming in from one of two sides. Some of them, there may be 3 trails coming in, but from either side as you come in, there's going to be a first camp. And the common practice I've heard is often leave those available for someone who's stumbling in late. So as soon as they hit camp, they can stop and they don't have to walk through the middle of camp and wake everyone up. Or if you're going to be out super early, like if you're, for whatever reason, you got to get up right as the sun is breaking. You want to be traveling, and maybe the people around you don't want to get up that early. Maybe don't pick the site in the dead center where you're surrounded by people.
Mhm.
Pick one on the edges. Any other like common courtesies or ideas that you want to share with people about camps?
Well, the other thing, the various campsites are going to be fairly widely dispersed, maybe 100 yards between a campsite. I mean, you're not camped 20 feet away. You may not even,
Usually, yeah.
you may not even see another crew. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the what, leave no trace principles. Be courteous to your neighbors, and respect their privacy, and want to have a positive relationship with the environment.
It
I
just
was impressed
depends.
by
Sometimes
the-
you're camped right up against somebody.
Yeah.
I think Upper Greenwood out in the Valle, we unit after unit or crew after crew after crew was just tented around the switchbacks.
Yeah, Upper Greenwood, the camp is like 3 miles long.
My gosh.
Wow.
We'd encourage our guys to, look at several campsites before we picked one.
Yeah.
The next one maybe, so just send one person, take your packs off, go look, and then come back. And we did that at Bear Caves and found one of the last campsites that was the best campsite we had the whole trip, because
Yep.
we could see the two at the time right through the trees. It was great to see the sun, and it was just a fabulous time after the rain.
And some of the campsites are a little larger than others. If you have a full 12-man crew, you're going to need a little more space to spread out than an 8-man crew. So,
Yeah, indeed. All right. I was trying to find a map on here, and I think I got myself a little lost being nostalgic as I'm going through pictures here on the other screen from the last trek. I was trying to remember which campsite it was, and it was Stockade Ridge is what I was thinking about, where you are very close to being, some of these sites up here, as you get up at the higher elevations at Stockade Ridge, are really close to each other. And then some of them are much more spread out, and you'll find that. And in Stockade Ridge, I've had multiple experiences of being close to really loud crews. And I don't know what it is about Stockade Ridge that inspires people to be like super obnoxiously loud. But you mentioned leave no trace, and be not creating sound pollution as part of leave no trace. I'll remind people, please don't encourage your crews to be loud and rude and keep other people awake when you're in the backcountry.
And you'll most likely be sharing a bare cable with another crew or two. You know. So.
Yeah, so pay attention when the ranger talks about bare cable etiquette and how to keep your lines from getting tangled with the other crews that are up there. And,
Right.
sometimes you do have to coexist on that same bare cable. So please be sure that your folks are paying attention for that.
Right.
Well, I would like to thank any of our viewers and our panelists. We've done it again. We have squandered another hour. Mark made a couple comments, and I neglected to put this one on the screen. I was waiting for the right time, and then I missed it. That's a blast from the past. I think the Rangers now, they do something different, and I actually try not to talk about it because it's going to be a surprise if and when it happens. I don't think it's required. I think they still have to choose to do it. So the Rangers may have a surprise for people. They may not. At one point back in the day, peach cobbler may have been a thing. I seem to remember a peach cobbler back in the day. And I remember it because at the time I was anti-peach cobbler. I was team peach cobbler. Just put it down the sump. Don't even waste my time with
Team
it.
cherry cobbler. There you go.
Right. It was more apple for me, but any kind of cobbler. Let's be honest here. Any kind of cobbler without ice cream, it's just an insult. So, I mean that's just the way it is, right? And I don't want to carry that out in the field. So, anyhow,
those ovens are heavy.
So, I would like to make a commitment to everyone. But I really can't. I'd like to commit that next month I'll get everything created and set up ahead of time so that we aren't scrambling at the last minute for me to create this broadcast. And then maybe more people see it and they'll be able to watch live, because I see the data from the various places. Like we are at Facebook, a YouTube channel, we're actually live on Twitch right now, as well as on X, which used to be Twitter. And we're on Rumble. Believe it or not, we're actually on Rumble and on Odyssey. So we're out there on a lot of different places. And I see that even on a program like this, where we've had very little participation from the audience and not a lot of numbers showing of people here, people watching replay. So we will continue doing this. And I am on the verge of fixing our podcast system. It broke about 6 months ago and stopped working correctly. I actually signed up and pay for a service now where I am ripping the audio from these and pushing them up as an audio podcast. I need to get a few back episodes put up so that this is still useful, even though we don't get a lot of live participation, because I don't get things created in time. So now you understand what my ship went through and why I'm so happy for them that they have a competent leader now who will actually get stuff done on time for them. So thank you, Rob. Boot. Come on. Thanks for being here anyway, though, dude. And,
it was
Darrel,
Team Hair before I changed
it. How did that happen?
Hey, Jeff, I got to give a quick plug. This Saturday, I'm not only going to do live, but also in person high adventure training at Scouting University at Circle 10. So if you're in the Dallas area, come by and check me out.
I do want to make a plug. Let's see. Does anyone know? I'm just going to ask it that way. Does anyone know when the next official Philmont? I mean, this is our live chat for our unofficial group on Facebook that talks about Philmont, but the real Philmont people actually do broadcast periodically. And they try to get the official information out to help people figure out how to prepare. Do we know when the next one is, or have they done them all for now?
No, they have not done them all. They're on Thursday, and quick look at the calendar. I'm going to say the 19th of January, but it's certainly go to the film. I mean, we are not the official voice. Go to go to the Philmont website under treks and
I got to
preparation,
be honest with you.
preparation and so
19th would
forth.
be Friday. Do they do it on a Friday?
No, they don't do them on Friday.
They do them on Thursdays.
They're
Or
usually
maybe
Thursday.
18th then. Okay.
I'm sure they have a lot of lawyers look at their scripts before they do their broadcast. No telling what you'll hear from us, though.
Oh,
No
yeah.
joke. Yeah, I enjoy that we're able to talk off the cuff
Yeah.
because we don't have the burden of being official. I
But
think
we,
that
but we really, we do not talk against it.
right.
We
So
are
okay.
in support of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to say we enjoy a little bit of support from them as well. I think that ebbs and flows largely depending on how rancorous I tend to be. But so it looks like the next one is, in fact, as Darrel said, December 18th at 6:30 p.m. And you can go to
December 18th?
December
And
18th?
That says December 18th. I'm looking at the wrong month. What am I doing? Let me scroll this direction.
That's a long wait. I mean, come on.
Yet again, we see why I am unburdened by, having to worry about being official. Like, who would let me be official when I can't even keep the month straight?
Yeah,
It's in here somewhere.
And 6:30 is Mountain Time, not
Maybe it's not. I
Not-
haven't found
not
it
the
yet.
right time,
but
which is Central Time. Yeah. So
they tend to post it on the Philmont Scout Ranch Facebook page if you happen to frequent that. And I will call out every year. This is something that I haven't heard from anyone at base camp yet, or any of the staff yet, saying we're having trouble filling some different positions for this summer, but it's going to happen. So let's just be preemptive and say, if you have anyone that you think could be interested, what a stellar growth opportunity to go work with some cool people in one of the greatest places on earth for a king's ransom. And by that, I mean the experience that you'll get, not the money. The money, you still get paid, but it's not a lot, right? So
it's reasonable, and they, the area that they always have problems with is food service, but that is also their highest paying position.
Yeah. So Philmont.Outdoor/jobs if you have any interest in doing that. Or if you want to share that with, maybe you got some scouts that are looking for a summer job or something, go ahead and share that with them. Get them thinking about it now so that when the time is right, they're ready to dive in and make that happen. Okay, we have exceeded our allotment. Thank you, anyone who's still hanging around, for squandering an hour and 7 minutes with us. You're not getting that back, so we do appreciate you making the choice to share it with us. We'll be back next month. That will be February 2024, where we're going to talk about, we don't know yet. It's a cliffhanger. You got to tune in next time to find out.
February 13, we'll be back.
Yeah, it'll be 9 p.m. on the East Coast. And we'll have a fabulous panel, I guarantee you, for your money back.
Break it to you guys. That's Mardi Gras.
Yeah. Scott won't be there.
Oh, yeah. I won't be here. Yes.
So if you still want to come, even though Scott won't be there, the rest of us will be there 9 p.m. on the second Tuesday of every month through the website, through the various YouTube channels. We'll be around. I think we covered everything. How do I word the question? I always forget how to word it. Oh, I know.
Not
Anybody?
Are we done? Is anybody not ready?
Anybody not ready?
I got.
All right. We're out of here. We'll see you next month.